Good morning, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. I hope that you guys had a wonderful weekend. If you're in Houston, you're probably dealing with a string of thunderstorms. It's been raining like crazy since midnight. But still, there's work to be done. There's growth to be achieved. There are so many things that are still out in front of us. Today is starting a unique week as far as what I'm going to do in the morning time. I've been trying to get back to the normal uh, theme infused days, Money Monday, relationship Wednesday, blah blah blah, and we are going to get back to that. But this week I'm going to focus all the way up until Friday, where we were going to merge the two of quantum physics and wealth. But we're going to talk about money and wealth for the next 4 days, and we're going to do it systematically. I have roughly about 23 minutes to get this first installment in because I have a 9 o'clock appointment. So I'm going to do the best I can to do this, but we're going to continue with this for the next 4 days. So what we don't get in today, we're going to get in over the next 4 days. Um, First of all, there's a misunderstanding from where I sit and how I operate. There's a misunderstanding of what poverty is, what it isn't, what lack is, what abundance is. And we're going to cover all of this over the next several days. So if we don't get it today and you're a little lost, just hang in there. If you have some questions, put it in the comment field. And I'm literally going to be coming back to the comment field to find out what questions are out there, and then we're going to deal with those as we move forward. If we have to push this into next week, we will, because it's extremely important to understand this. Uh, the first thing I want to get across to you is that poverty is not an accident. It is actually the result of of orchestrated ignorance among the masses. It is a belief. If you talk to the average person and you ask them about wealth, and you ask them about certain things that the wealthy experience that those who aren't wealthy experience, primarily how taxes are paid. For instance, we've heard a lot over the last year about Donald Trump not paying taxes, about Amazon making $11 billion and not paying taxes on it. And the first thing that comes out of the average person's mouth is that's not fair. And that comes from actually a place of ignorance. And when I say ignorance, I'm not speaking in a derogatory manner to insult someone. I'm saying that there's a lack of knowledge and understanding about how things work. And when you don't have an understanding of how things work, you tend to be taken advantage of by those who do. And so what you have to understand is the laws that allow uh, very wealthy people and very wealthy corporations to avoid paying taxes are actually available to anybody who understands the laws and understands how they operate. But it takes an entirely different mindset because most of those tax shelters are not in earned income. Earned income would be something like I have a job or I have a company where I go out and I offer a service or I offer myself as an asset to another company and they pay me as an asset, in other words, an employee. And when I get paid, I have to pay taxes on earned income. You have to pay taxes on capital gains, which would be the next form of income. So the first form of income is earned income. The second form of income would be a form of capital gains, or what some people call portfolio income, meaning that I invested in something at a low price, sold it at a higher price. That's capital gain. I pay taxes on that. The other is passive income, which is normally tied into assets, and it holds through hard or dry assets the wealth that you want to maintain. So in other words, most wealthy people have a form of passive income. Not that they don't have portfolio income. They may be playing the stock market. They may be into actively managed mutual funds, but I doubt it because it's hard to win in that unless they really know the game. And some do. And then you have indexing, which is passively managed um, funds like the S&P 500, things of that nature. And that is pretty steady, but it would make up a small portion of their true wealth. The vast majority of their wealth is more than likely going to be in assets they hold that hold value. And that's where the wealthy are different than those who are not, because we are taught cash. And like one of the biggest lies that has ever been told and taught in middle class and impoverished families and households is that you save money, you get rich. First and foremost, cash is never the way to wealth. Now, cash can be used as an instrument, but liquidity can be controlled and manipulated, and it's always controlled by someone other than those who are trying to become wealthy. It's controlled by the wealthy elite. And I'm going to get to something here. And like I said, I can't really get into it like I want to because I'm going to have to jump off in a few minutes. But what you have to understand is we live in a society where the wealthy know your biggest liabilities and the greatest threat to you building wealth is actually taxes and debt. But we live in a debt-based economy. So in other words, debt drives it. And so debt has to be created. And so how do we create debt? We create it by lending on value. What does that mean? Think about it. You go in for a loan to buy a house. You go in for a loan to buy a house. You get the loan. Now you get the loan and it's interest. And this interest is what's called compound interest. So it's actually working against what you need in order to build wealth, which is compound growth. You want something that's growing in a compound manner if you want to build wealth in anything you're investing in. But when you buy a house, most people have been taught that your house is your greatest asset. Well, not until you own it. Definitely, it is not even close until you at least have equal equity between you and the lender, because that's at the point where you can literally liquidate yours and pay off that balance, and now you still have debt, but you don't have debt with the original lender. So you really don't have an asset, a true asset, what I call a true asset, until you've paid it off and you own it outright. Now it's an asset because what it's worth is going to be more than what you're having to put in it. Because even after you've paid it off, you're going to have to maintain it. So, but when you look at the maintenance costs, the bills you're paying in and all that stuff, it's not going to come close to what the house is worth. So it's now an asset. And so it moves and it represents a part of your net worth. It moves against your debt to create your net worth. But anyway, here's what happens though. And if you can go back to 2008, when you had the huge crash, and the predominant force behind that was the banking system and subprime and predatory lending. And we had a crash in which a lot of people lost their homes. Well, one would think that was poor management. One would think that was just crooked people, but that's the way the system is. Let me explain something to you. And we're going to kind of end it here today. We're going to kind of get into it, and we're going to end it here today. We're going to get back on it tomorrow. Let me explain what I mean. The whole cash system, and when I speak of cash system, I'm speaking of currency, physical currency, and digital money. So the whole thing. But what we're looking is, if you pay attention, we are talking a lot more about digital currency, not just in the dollar, but in cryptocurrency and everything else. And everything is trying to be moved, it is being subtly moved towards a cashless society. That place you can go into right now in America, and definitely in Europe, where they don't accept cash. You have to pay with a card. And what happens with that? First and foremost, when you have to pay with a card, if your card is declined, you can't make the purchase. So now someone's completely controlling whether you can buy or not. That's one thing. That's something we're going to get into a little bit later on in the week, but I kind of want to throw that out and let that sit there. But what happens in this thing about wealth building, when I tell you wealth, I mean, poverty is not an accident. It is literally a construct. It's a construct that's created through orchestrated ignorance. In other words, your schools aren't teaching wealth. Your schools are teaching your children how, and some of you are still in school, are teaching you how to prepare yourself to get a job, earn money, where that money will be taxed, and how you earn what you earn is controlled. It's teaching you how to have a mindset that will never, ever, ever lead to wealth. You have to change your mind from working for money to having money work for you. Now, there's a process to go through in getting that, but you have to have that shift in mindset, or you will never, ever truly be wealthy, because you are, number one, trading your time for cash. You only have a limited amount of time. Number two, sitting up with a mindset that says someone else has to pay me in order for me to have money. So you're never looking and creating opportunities for yourself through yourself to acquire and hold wealth. You're looking for someone to pay you, and it's based off whether or not they believe you're worth what you're asking for whatever it is you're giving. And so that's the mindset. But again, this is orchestrated ignorance. But let me show you how this orchestrated ignorance plays out in a very common way with people never knowing it happens. Okay, you get the loan for the home. Now, in a society, there in this system, there is an expectation of a certain amount of foreclosures. And people would think banks don't want to lend to people who are end up not defaulting on their loan and having their home foreclosed on, because that's just what, you have to have good credit. That's why they're doing out there, because they don't want all these properties. But what you don't understand is cash, whether it's digital, which everything seems to be moving to, or whether it's currency, is actually only valid as a form of wealth, because buyer and seller give it value. If people right now said, I'm not using cash anymore, I'm gonna start bartering, the value of cash would drop. Why? Because we're the one that give it value. It's not a real true asset. It is a fake asset in the sense that we are told what value to give it and we buy into it, and so we use it. It's an exchange mechanism. It's not real true value. Assets are things you hold, like houses, jewelry, precious metals, land. That's real true assets. But this is what happens. They loan you the money for the house and the land. And there's a certain percentage of people who are going to default on the loan because they lost their job, because they got in over their head, because of poor spending habits, because they're consumer minded, a bunch of things that are all precipitated and facilitated through false information that puts people in the mindset of trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. Well, anyway, guess what happens when they foreclose on the home? You default on the loan, they foreclose on the home, they get the home and the land. That's the real wealth, not the money they lent you with interest that you really never see. Think about it. When you purchase a home, the lender says, okay, I'm going to do it. You set a closing date. You show up at closing, and nobody sees $300,000 or whatever house you're paying for on the table. Nobody even sees a check for $300,000 on the table. That money is wired digitally from one place to another to pay one other person, one person for whatever the seller is going to get a transfer into their bank account. Going to show some numbers, and they'll be able to use that to go out and do something, hopefully buy another home, or at least put in another home, or whatever the situation is. And there's this cash flow thing going on that is also being controlled. But I want to get back to how real wealth is being ciphered away from people by using people to get it for the wealthy. I'm going to loan you the money to get the house. The money never actually exchanged. You never even see it. But you bought the house. You got the house now. But now you got to pay them money that you are earning through more than likely earned income, paying taxes on that, paying interest on the loan. And then if you can't keep up with it, they take what you bought with it after getting money from you, and now they actually hold the wealth. They got you to get it, but now they have it. And that's how wealth is being kept. That's how wealth is being moved. You have to be very aware of that. To me, and this is my opinion, and I'm not alone on this, credit is the greatest scam ever. I hear people all the time, there are a lot of people out there that do great jobs at helping you get your credit score up. And there are reasons to have an excellent credit score if you know how to play the game. But an excellent credit score can also get you in a world of trouble if you don't know how to play the game. But credit in and of itself is the greatest scam ever. Why? Because of what I just told you. I'm going to give you credit to buy the car. And there's just based on the actuaries numbers. Actuaries sit up and crush these numbers for banks to say this many people are going to default on a loan. This many people from this industry with this credit score will default. This many people from this industry with that credit score will default. So you know, in giving out loans for specific amounts for specific things to specific people, how many of those people are going to balk. And so you know how some of the money is going to come in slow through people making their payments with interest. You're going to win on that end. Others are going to balk. That's why a lot of lenders have payoff penalties. They want you in the game long enough for something bad to go wrong so they can win. They also want the compounded interest because it's not applied all at once. It's compounded, whether it's annually or whatever, it's compounded. So they want that compounded growth of what they've invested. So what you have to understand is the importance is ownership. And what I tell people is we have to get into a mindset of supporting one another, getting together in groups and investing in something. And that way we will be building, growing, and having more control. We're going to get more off into the digital side of things. There has been this movement for some time to go completely digital. Why is that something that you should be concerned about? It sounds very convenient, and that's how they've sold it. They've sold online banking. They've sold, transfers and all this stuff. Wire transfers, online banking, all this stuff. If you notice, you got a lot of branches shutting down. It's becoming more and more difficult to go into a branch and conduct a hand-to-hand transaction. Why? Because they're trying to limit cash movement or currency movement, and it's digital. Why should we be concerned about that? Because whoever controls those electronic systems controls the ability in the economy and can literally shut an economy down. And once you get people to where they are totally at the mercy of the system, the digital system, and if what you're left with now is, can I barter? And there are talks and there are rumors floating around. I haven't seen any real legal moves as of yet, but there's a lot of talk that the wealthy elite are looking for ways to push laws through government. You got to think, it's government, it's finance, and in what you have to understand, and it's the academic system. The government, the financial system, and the academic system are all roles in this. The academic system does not teach the creation of the development of wealth. It teaches you how to be a good employee. Even in advanced studies, getting a PhD does not set you up to be a great business owner or investor. It sets you up as an expert in a particular field that you are going to have to get somebody in most instances to hire you and pay you a salary to use. And we're finding that more and more degree people are finding it hard to find viable or reasonable income. So many people aren't even working in their fields. Well, the whole thing is, if you don't understand economics, then you do have a problem. If you don't understand wealth, you will have a problem. If you don't understand how all three of these entities, the government, the financial system, and the academic system, are working together to create people who will follow along with the program and keep the money moving the way they want it moving. So the wealthy, the extreme and elite wealthy stay wealthy, while the vast majority of people are either at a place of comfort or discomfort, living at poverty or below the line of poverty. And we have to understand that you don't change that by working harder. You change that by working smarter and developing an understanding. You have to put the energy and effort into learning how the system works in order for the system to work for you. Now, like I said, I would love to stay on more today and really kick this off, but we're going to pick this up again tomorrow morning. If you know someone that's serious about learning about finances, because it's not what you think. People, one of the things with me is I learned the last time when I was really, really in a great place as far as what I thought, as far as wealth and having money and all of that. And I was very cash heavy, had a lot of liquidable assets. that really weren't assets. And so I'll find myself in times like this because I have so much going on and I'm trying to diversify so much that there are sometimes cash flow problems. And people say, well, how's that wealth? Because my wealth isn't in cash. My wealth in the things I'm creating, the things I'm acquiring. And those things can be passed on down generations. That's what the wealthy are doing. When you hear somebody and they say, you know, they're worth $2.5 billion, they don't have $2.5 billion in the bank. You know, they may have maybe a million, 100 million in the bank in cash. The rest is assets, real estate property, commercial, residential, land. They're going to have some invested in upstarts, uh, businesses and so many other ways. And all of that works against whatever debt they have to create that net worth of $2.5 billion. It's not cash. And the thing is, the more cash you have, the more you're at control of a system that you don't control. You know, anything can happen. Anything can happen. And you can look up one day and log in, and that those zeros and the numbers in front of the zeros that you got in your bank account are gone. And what are you going to do besides complain and hope you get it straightened out? It's a little bit more difficult for somebody to take something that's a deed with your name on it and the acquisitions and things of that nature. Now, yes, you need to be able to negotiate exchange. That's what cash comes in. But there are other ways to negotiate exchange as well. Those are the things that you have to learn. But the one thing you have to be keenly aware of is playing the credit game and knowing how the game should be played versus how it's being played. And what are you acquiring with your credit? Is it going to be an asset at some point? Is it going to work for you at some point? For instance, a passive income through a rental property you acquired and now you're going to lease out. That would be a move with credit. Why? Because it's going to pay for itself. And after it finishes paying for itself, it's going to pay you. But anyway, I got to get out of here. I got this appointment I got to jump on. But that's going to be the start. We'll get back on this tomorrow. But that's it for now. You guys have a great day. As I always say, live your life on full so that you die on E. With that, I'm out. Peace.